especially in tech companies, we often mistake goals with a strategy. Getting to 10 million ARR is not a strategy.
Curiosity, and especially when it comes to sales, is one of the core pillars.
You have to be curious if you want to become good at sales. It's the seed of helping others. True sales happens when you have a desire to help others. It's about your problem, not about the product I sell. If you're looking to get into sales, start talking to customers, start getting no's. Sales is like swimming. You can read a book about swimming. Until the moment that you jump into the pool and you try, you don't know. You need to do it, otherwise you don't feel the water.
I know that coaches don't give advice,
but
but
follow your talent and become better at it. At some point, I think we were told, oh no, follow your passion. You know, what you're passionate about will be the thing that you'll be good at. I don't think that's true. Work on the 20% of things that you're good at.
do you think that letting go is a good or a bad thing sometimes?
I think it's a good thing. I started engineering because I was very curious since I was little. I was very curious about how things work.
Okay.
And you know the usual cliche of tearing apart your toys and, you know, fixing them or investigating how this motor or this battery fits in. Mm-hmm. Well, I was doing that.
Yeah.
I was one of those, you know, stripping apart and then putting things together, and not always they worked again. But, you know, you learn.
It happens.
So I started with this curiosity. I think curiosity is what has driven me over, you know, the things that I've done. So first it was a curiosity about how things work. And when I started my university studies, it was the boom of internet. Yes, I come from a pre-internet background. And I was fascinated about, how machines talk to other machines, basically, and how you can find this plethora of content and you know, websites and everything. So that was the starting point. And then my first job was very technical. My first two positions were dealing with technology, like raw technology. I'm talking servers. I'm talking the software that runs on those servers. It was the time where technology was sold with the hardware, right? It was the pre-SaaS time. Not that I'm too old, but I have experience. And so at some point, I actually started to wonder, okay, why is this customer spending thousands or hundreds of thousands of euros in technology? What's the driver? I mean, yes, it does cool things, and yeah, you have this website and this conferencing system, and you know, you can talk to people, you know, across and have this digital quality, all those things, great. But why? Right? What is behind that? What's the purpose? And that curiosity led me to move more to the sales side of things, like how people or why people do things in the first place. What do they expect? You buy something because you expect something out of that, right? You invest in something because you believe the return will be better. And that curiosity, you know, made me, you know, kind of move from the end of the, let's say, the customer journey, which is implementing the technology, to the beginning, which is convincing people why they should buy technology and use technology. And there was also this, I discovered that the more I talk to people, that I enjoyed those personal interactions. And, you know, again, curiosity, you know, how they are and what drives them, and what are the motivations, what are the, you know, things that they like, don't like. So yeah, I think that was, the transition from a very technical position to less technical, which is sales.
Yeah, and definitely curiosity as the core of, well, you said that you were doing all those things about like with toys and with everything else that you encountered, right? And that the curiosity was the driver for you. And I believe that a lot of people who are watching us right now know from, well, like in one way or the other, that curiosity, and especially when it comes to sales, is one of the core pillars when it comes to any business, right? What's your perspective on that?
It's a fundamental, for me, it's a fundamental skill. You know, you have to be curious if you want to become good at sales. curiosity helps you in many other ways, but specifically if you're searching or looking into, getting into sales, curiosity will help you a lot because it's the seed of helping others. And for me, true sales happens when you have a desire to help others, not to push things to others, not to convince them, definitely not manipulating them. So that cliche of sales, just very, very pushy, it does not work actually. But if you start from a position of curiosity, hey, what is your business? How do you make money, Mr. Customer? What are the problems that you have? How does your industry work? Then you start, from a place of, I'm curious about you. It's about you. It's not about me. It's about your problem, not about the product I sell. And then at some point, if you make the connection between the problem the customer has and what you offer, great. If not, well, you develop a personal relationship. You put it there and you walk away with a very nice, connection that you did, and you don't try to sell because there is nothing that fundamentally you can add to that person. But for me, curiosity is what drives the whole process. And when I've interviewed salespeople for my teams and in the companies that I work for, curiosity always was one of the skills that I try to assess, because it is the seed of everything in sales.
Yeah, I love it. And if I could sum it up, I heard basically 3 steps, if I can call them steps. The first one is be curious. The second one would be, it's about you, it's not about me.
Yep.
And then number 3 would be, I'm here to help you, right? Achieve your goals. And this is, if I can do this, then great. If not, then, well, we had a nice interaction.
Totally.
Yeah.
And at that point, that last point is what sets you in the same, I call, professional level. So some of the people that I talk to that are in sales, inherently, they consider themselves a little bit like, oh, I'm here to serve you, Mr. Customer, right? Or I'm here to do as you please. No, you're a good professional, you're in sales, and you have a lot of things to offer to this other person, your customer. And it has to be level, right? It has to be a leveled relationship because honestly, you want to help and you think you have something that can help the customer, and the customer needs help on a certain thing, right? From that point of view, it goes well, right? It goes hand in hand, and there is this mutual benefit.
Yeah.
Right. I don't believe in master slave type of relationships. I don't understand why customers sometimes behave like they're the ultimate boss, and they disrespect salespeople, because honestly, that salesperson maybe knows more about the industry than you, Mr. Customer, because that salesperson speaks to tens and tens of customers that do the same as you. And so if you were a little bit less, condescending, you will learn about what your competitors do, what the industry does. So, there is this, like I say, leveling play that I like to teach the teams that I work with.
Yeah, I like that perspective on sales, that actually you are the one who gets to talk to other people from the industry, whatever industry it is. And what's the question that popped up in my head while I was listening to you, I know that you're also a coach among all the other things that you're doing. And I know that coaches don't give advice, but now I'm going actually to ask you, what would be one advice that you would give to people who are either interested in doing sales or already doing sales, but maybe are not achieving the results they want? So what would be the advice of do this? And what would be the advice of don't do this?
Good question. I think the advice of do this would be actually get in and do it. Like, yes, you need to educate yourself. Yes, you need to learn about the industry, about the product that you sell and everything. If you're looking to get into sales, there are some things that you can already read about, sales methodologies, for instance. But sales is like swimming, right? You can read a book about swimming. You can watch a YouTube video. Until the moment that you jump into the pool and you try, you don't know. So practice is key. So I think my advice would be, go ahead and do it. Like, go into it. Go into the first sales job. If you really want to get into sales, go into the sales job that you find, no matter if it's a junior position, and start doing it. Start talking to customers. Start getting no's, right? Start getting situations where you have to defend your product, to convince, because practicing is the only way that you can. It's like swimming. Like I say, you need to do it, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you don't feel the water. Don't do it. Huh. I think it's related to the first one. Don't do it without a method. So I guess learn from it is the easiest way of putting this. But do not do sales on the while.
Okay.
Like, don't go in and just try things every day or test new approaches. Be a little bit methodical, right? Try to stick to one approach, test it with a number of customers, and then if it works, great. But if it doesn't, modify it. But learn how to use data, I guess, right? Don't do it on the while. Have the tools, have the data that supports how you are doing it. I guess that would be my don't do this. So do not sell without a process, I guess.
Okay. Interesting for various reasons. I would just like to shortly reflect on something that you mentioned at the beginning, that I believe can be a very interesting topic, and actually something that majority of us experience throughout our careers, and that's the change of careers, right?
Yep.
Because you said at first you started at engineering area and industry, which then moved you to sales, and then which moved you to other areas that we're going to talk about. So how was that transition from you, let's say, from the on the inner side? So how did you feel about transitioning from one career to others? Because nowadays it's a little bit different. 50 years ago, people usually started doing one job and then they used to do it for the rest of their lives.
Yep.
Now it's much more dynamic. So how did you approach that?
I didn't have a specific goal myself. So when I was thinking about what is the next thing that I wanted to do, I always liked to have options. So I was not, me personally, I was not the type of person that would say, "Ooh, I want to become a sales manager in a company like this," right? But I had options, and I think in my head, it worked better. What is the things that I didn't enjoy doing? And those things, I knew them clearly. So, for instance, I know that I'm not good at repetitive tasks.
Okay.
That's something I don't enjoy for long, right? I can do, but it's not, it's not in me, right? So that I knew. I knew that even though I like processes, I'm not too rigid. So again, if I'm in some sort of job that has very rigid, let's say, guidelines or structure, or that it doesn't allow creativity, not for me. So for me, it was more of a case of, okay, this I don't like, or this is not my area, this is not my area. At some point, I was afraid that as a tech guy, I would be outdated soon. So that's something I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was more knowing what are the things that don't really that I don't really like, and then that opened up these other possibilities. But again, it was by doing that I learned, if I liked something or not. The first management assignment that I had, I was not a manager; I was a team lead, because or an interim team lead, because the manager transitioned, and all of a sudden I was in charge of coordinating things. And then I said, that's something I like. So I guess a mix of things I don't like because I know, and then trying out things and saying, yes, this is something I'd like to develop.
Yeah. What I notice here is a lot of, I don't know if it was conscious back at time or unconscious, but a lot of self-reflection and self-awareness of actually noticing, okay, I don't really like repetitive things. And yes, I like, let's say, having, I believe that you said I like having a structure. No, I like processes, but not being too rigid, right?
Yep.
Within that. So it is about, when we talk a lot about leadership and a lot about, okay, how we lead others, how we manage teams, but actually it comes with self-awareness and
Oh, yeah.
self-leadership. What is your perspective and opinion on that area, and how do you think it can help, well, any person in business world?
A lot. Introspection, having time to sometimes stop and think and reflect, I think is key. I mean, the bad thing about it is that we used to do, or we often do it when something bad happens to us, when a disgrace happens to us, and then we stop and say, "Oh, I need to, reflect about where I am, who I am, etc." But that's why we learned. So people say, no, we always learn from mistakes, and we always learn from disgraces and the bad things that happen to us. It's true, but I believe it's because at those points we force ourselves to stop and reflect. Yes, you reflect on what happened to you, and there is, the healing process and everything. Okay. But it's also a time that you actually stop doing what you're doing because you're healing. But that also opens you to, reflect on other things. And I believe that's the point where you grow the most. So if we could get a point where, something good happened to us and then we stop and think, oh, that would be phenomenal.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is one of the things that is very easy to say here on a podcast, stop and reflect. And then everyone says, yeah, of course. But no one does it, right? It's like drink 3 liters of water a day. Yes, everyone agrees with that. And then you go off and, you don't. But yes, and I'm not different. The times that I grew the most are the times where something, not pleasant happened to me. And then I had to reflect. And it's at those times when you get to know yourself a little bit better, and then it's a journey.
Yeah.
And we can talk about hours about that inner journey, because it's the other reason. This is my personal point of view. I think the other reason why we don't do it often is because what if we discover something we don't like about ourselves? We can't escape ourselves, right? We have to live with ourselves.
Yeah.
If you see something in a friend or a acquaintance that you don't like, okay, you put that person away, but you cannot put yourself away.
Yeah.
So inner reflection is tough. Looking at yourself in the mirror, I think there is this fear behind that. What if I find something that I don't like about myself?
Okay. I have one tricky question.
Okay.
Have you ever discovered something about yourself that maybe you didn't expect, or you didn't like? And how did you manage that to move on and actually to make progress?
I did. So the short answer is yes. Yes, I did. I found one of the things that I found about myself is that I was at sometimes I didn't want to recognize. I knew that I didn't like something, and it was not, it was something that I didn't want to do. But because of education, or because of social pressure, or because of the environment, I was, forced to say, no, that's something you have to do. I'm not sure if I'm making myself
Understood.
very clear, understood, but it's this type of, you don't really want to do it, and you're lying about it, but you keep going at it because you're expected to. And it can be about sometimes good things, but it can be about you having some some desires, some ways of doing things that, hey, you're okay with it. Maybe the rest of the environment are not okay with it, but it's your essence. So denying that, I think for me was, it's something that took me a while to, yeah, be comfortable with. It comes with age, unfortunately. The more you're sure about yourself, the more you listen to that. Yeah.
And I believe then that realization, as you said, it takes a while, but it brings you more closer to who you are for real, right?
Gets closer to your values.
Yes.
And no one has the same values. And, some values for some people are less important, but are your values, is what you believe on. And so when you do things that are away or isolated from your values, at some point you get drained from energy. You act as in a very automatic way, but you don't have this inner engine or fuel that propels you. It's only when you do things related to your own values that you find that. But maybe those values are not the same as your couple values, or your coworkers, or your family members, or your friends. And then, yeah, you in order to fit in, you give away some of your, values. And yeah, I think at those moments I was, more disconnected.
What would you say would be a healthy way of aligning your values with the values of whoever is, I would not say on the other side, because then somehow it makes us opposites, but like
Yep.
of the one who's next to you?
Well, the first thing is really get to know yourself. Back into this, introspective exercise of, hey, this is who I am now, and that changes, by the way.
Yeah.
So it's not something that you do once in your life and say, okay, this is me, these are my values, I'm all set for life. No, that changes. So knowing at what stage you are and what you value is important. And then the second thing is communication. That is key. With empathy, but with assertivity, let others know this is who I am, this is what I value. And hopefully you'll find common ground with the people around you. But sometimes you'll find yourself a bit more distant from the people that are around you. Okay, that's okay. I mean, you're not the same as you mature. It's very rare to have the same type of people around you, unless they go and follow a similar path to yours. Not the same, but parallel, right? So yeah, know yourself and then communicate with empathy and assertivity, both things. Right? You don't want to be this person of, this is my way. You adapt to it, but you don't want to say, don't want to be this. At least my perspective is this adaptive person that can be everything and anything.
Yeah. Now, when we touch the topic of communication, that I'm personally very passionate about, you do sales.
Yep.
You do mentoring. You do coaching. So let's say that you're surrounded by people most of the time. How much your communication differs depending on who you talk to, and how important do you think it is?
It is very important. So let's just start with the second part of the question. It's absolutely important. And it's important to, and this goes again with curiosity. It's important to find the way that people need to be communicated or told things. That's another great skill of a salesperson, right? So it's not so much about how I communicate. It's about how you want things to be communicated, and then adapting to that, right? Some people give me the executive summary first and then the explanation. Okay, great.
Yep.
Some others are the other way around. Give me all the explanation and let me come to the executive summary myself. Don't rush things. Some people are more the details, right? The context. Others are more about just give me the facts, right? So it's important, and it's difficult to assess especially when you get to know someone, what's their style of communication. But having the ability to switch to different types, I think is a great ability. And I think great leaders and great communicators have that ability of reading the audience and then adapting to that. The other thing about communication is a topic that I'm very passionate about. So stop me if I get too long.
No worries.
The other topic that I recently learned not so long ago is if you want to communicate in the best possible way, which is getting across, like really transmitting, like, you know, like really not only telling a message, but landing that message in the hearts of the people, you need to think about the emotion that you want to create in those people, in that audience. So the usual, you know, a thought creates an emotion, creates action, right? Same way applies for a great speech or a great communication. We all start by thinking about what we want to communicate. Oh, I need to communicate this data and this thing. But ultimately, we communicate in order to instill actions, to get someone to do something.
That's right.
Right? Unless you're purely explaining things. But even then, your objective is for the other person to understand. So there is always an objective. There is always an action. What is the emotion related to that action? Right? If I'm telling you, you really need to dedicate time to self-reflection, right? That's the key of my message, and I'm delivering a speech. If I tell you the facts, you know, self-reflection is related to growth. Studies say that, you know, if you dedicate time to meditate, you will get clear. Okay. But what if I tell you a story? What if I hit you in the heart and get you worried about things, or get you excited, or hopeful that, you know, you will fix a situation that you have if you practice this inner reflection? If you start feeling that, then the message has landed and it will stay and it will create an action. So one thing about creating speeches and communicating is think about the emotion that you want to create in those people. So this is why storytelling is powerful. And every one of us has heard about storytelling. Oh, you need to use storytelling. Why? It's not because it makes it interesting. It's not only because it makes it interesting and you know, you get your audience captivated. It's because stories spark emotions. They spark feelings, right? When you tell a story, like when you see a movie or a book, you feel things. That's the purpose of storytelling, to make you feel something so you act on it.
I love it. I love it. And as you said, we hear a lot about storytelling, and I think you summed it up very, very nicely, that actually the purpose of communication is, yes, conveying the message, but if there's no emotion in that, if we don't get that spark, then it's not very possible that we're going to inspire some action, right? Before emotion. And something that I really, really liked was something that you mentioned before when you talked about the ability to communicate. Do you think that we're born with that, or that it can be developed and improved?
I think we're all born with the ability to communicate. Not only that, from evolution, we have, I mean, the reason why we're here as humans and human beings is because we developed, one of the reasons, maybe I think the main reason is that we develop this ability to communicate, right? And to interact in a complex way. So I think it is in everyone's power to communicate. it might be one of the few things, that is, inside everyone's abilities. Then you perfect it, right? I think that the people that say, no, I'm not a good communicator, or, I don't know how to communicate, or I don't want to communicate, or I think it's because something happened in their early years, their environment most likely, that conditioned them not to talk, not to maybe express, not to communicate. So my personal opinion, without being an anthropologist or anything like that,
Yeah.
but I think everyone is born with those. The people that say, no, I'm not a good communicator, is because they didn't get to practice, they didn't get encouraged to do it.
What you mentioned right now is something that in coaching is called, or we give it a name of limiting beliefs,
Yep.
of I'm not a good communicator, or I'm not really good at this or that, which can affect a lot of areas of our life, both personal and professional. So because I know that, again, so now moving on to your role of a mentor and a coach, I believe that when you work with people, you also encounter, well, we all have them, right? So
Yep.
in one way or the other. So how do you help people, or how you support people in overcoming those limiting beliefs, and how important do you think it is in business world?
Well, it is important. That I have a I have mixed feeling, not mixed feelings, but a mixed approach to limiting beliefs.
Okay.
Right. So let's say, or let's start with how to overcome limiting beliefs. Right. Limiting beliefs usually come from certain situations that happened to you in the past. You tried something and you failed. And instead of getting someone that encouraged you to try again, you got someone, or you had a situation where you were, told off, right? And then, yeah, you thought, oh, I'm not good at this. That can be one. Another can be the inner language, the inner dialogue that we tell ourselves, which is super powerful. And it's the most limiting factor that we have. What we tell ourselves is super, super powerful. And we're constantly talking to ourselves. Even if you don't, it's not the usual, oh, I'm talking out loud to myself. No, we're all talking to ourselves secretly and silently all the time. And if I get people to reflect about it by questioning them, then for me, that's the first step. Why do you think you're not good at? Oh, because, these things happened to me. Okay. And what did you do? And it's about getting them to realize what was the seed of them telling them that message, right? And also to work with them in stopping that. If that belief is really limiting them and is something self-imposed, okay, then let's work on how to limit that or reduce that. And I think the first step is being aware of, right? So detect when you have this inner dialogue of, I'm going to try to, no, I'm not good at it. Okay, stop. Think, annotate. What do you what you feel? What have you told yourself? That's, for instance, one very specific technique, of working with those limiting beliefs. But it's all in our minds. It's all in our inner dialogue. So far, the how to overcome limiting beliefs. The other side of limiting beliefs is sometimes, and maybe you won't agree with me, sometimes we take it too far, which is sometimes people are really not good at something. And you see them making real efforts and really getting at it and getting very frustrated because they've been told, if you put enough effort, you can become anything. Well, that's not true. And maybe this will not go well with certain audiences. But no, you cannot become, or you cannot do everything you want. There are certain things that are just not possible, right? Do I want to become an astronaut? yeah, that would be cool. Can I become an astronaut? No way. There is not a 1% chance or even less that I can become an astronaut. So for me, distinguishing between a limiting belief and the self-imposed, let's say, the self, how can I say it? Trying so hard to do something that is really not within your power, even though you put a lot of effort into it, that only drives to exhaustion and frustration. So I'm always very careful of, saying, "Oh, that's a limiting belief. It can be
Yeah.
overcome." Yeah, sometimes that's actually a limitation that you have, and you have to learn about it and move on. Right? Not everyone is good at everything. And I've seen cases, and it happened to me. It happens also to people that are very perfectionist, right? They tend to think, "Oh, if I put enough effort into something, I will get at it, or I'll be, the best." And well, chances are not. But that's also part of a coach or a mentor to really see and direct people maybe to areas that are better than others. I personally believe that people achieve more by working on their on the things that are good at, like their strengths,
Yeah.
than their weaknesses. So following the Pareto rule,
Yeah.
the 80-20, work on the 20% of things that you're good at, and the 80% of things that you're not good at. Okay, you can maybe polish them, but if that 20%, if you really are good at those and you excel, then you'll find your career. Because not everyone is good at everything, and right now with the specialization of jobs and tasks and everything, it's about finding what you're really, really good at, rather than just trying to polish everything that you can become better. That was a long speech.
But it was a very, very good one with a lot of very nice messages, I would say, and takeaways. You mentioned choosing your career or choosing your, let's say, pathway or your area that you want to improve and to be good at. Sometimes I believe it doesn't matter whether you're at the beginning of your career or in the middle of your career, but sometimes there are moments when we find ourselves in, what do I want to do next?
Yep.
And do I still want to continue doing what I'm doing, or do I want to change this? And what do you think is maybe the best approach, or the approach that you tried or that you tried with your clients, that we should take at that moment and get ourselves out of that point where we feel stuck?
Two things I found useful, two techniques. One is to write down things. It helps stopping the never stopping washing machine, as I call it, of thoughts,
Yeah.
right? This kind of tumbling machine inside our head. So the best way to stop that is write down. Yeah, like put your thoughts in writing. Force yourself to empty yourself and put it on paper. Maybe at first you need to do like automatic writing, which is just I'm going to write, and whatever it feels like writing, I'm going to write. Sometimes it will be more structured, right? Like sitting down and really maybe following pros and cons structure, or some other type of more structure. But first, or one of the techniques is actually get away of your running thoughts and stop it and empty yourself so you can analyze. The other thing that I recommend on those cases is talk to someone.
Okay.
If it's a mentor, great, right? If it's someone that has some education or some experience, they can guide you and work with you, fantastic. But a friend works as well. Someone that you trust, someone that you respect, someone that you look up to. Your family, if there are members of your family, for instance, that just find someone that you can do this exercise. And because of two things: one, you will get fresh perspective from someone, and two, in the process of communicating where you are and what you think, you will discover things. It's like writing, right? When you need to put your thoughts across to someone else, you need to structure them. You need them to make sense. If they make sense to the other person, they make sense to you. And you actually start discovering things, right? When we just think about things, we don't structure our thoughts. They're all mixed and matched. And like I say, it's like a washing machine, just tumbling. So again, it's about communication, because it helps you structuring what you have to say, and in order to make it understandable, you also might understand yourself a little bit better.
I love this viewpoint of communication, that actually, whenever we speak about communication, we refer to communication that we have with other people, but the communication that we're having with ourselves is as equally important, or maybe a bit even more important than the one that we're having with others.
It is very important, because the dialogue we have with ourselves never stops.
Yes.
It's always there.
Yes.
Unless you do some meditation at some points, but it's always there.
Yeah. And if you do it successfully.
Yeah. True.
Yeah. There is, so let's say that this is one situation that we can find ourselves in, where we are, let's say, at the crossroads of what am I going to do next, or what is my next step, etc. And then we have another situation that I believe you're very familiar with, where we have several interests and several roles, and we would like to have several and to do several things at once. How do you do it?
How do you choose?
How do you choose, or how do you manage all of that, if you manage at the same time? Or, how do you do it? Like, do you have to choose? Or maybe you don't have to choose, but like, if you don't choose, how do you manage it?
That's a good question. And I think the answer, as usual, is it depends where you're in your life. If I look at myself, there are times where I had to really choose. And it's usually when you transition into something, when you start something, when you transition into something, usually that's, for me, a period of focus. Because it's a new thing, or it's a change, and I need to master it, or I need to dedicate enough time to it. But then there comes a time, so back to your question of how do you know when to do it? For me, is when it's like driving, right? When you start driving, the only thing you can do is drive your car.
Yeah.
You don't talk to your friends, you don't put on music, you don't think about other things, you just drive, right? And then you start driving, and you start getting more comfortable at it. And at some point, you start talking to other people in the car, right? And at some other time, you even switch on your music and select your playlists and everything. That for me is the time where I can start maybe exploring other things. But for me, it's been a cycle.
Yeah.
So at some point, I was very, very focused on. So for instance, when I transitioned to be a manager for the first time, that was my focus. Right? It was like, okay, I don't know how to do this, and I have people that depend on me. I better cut, all the things and dedicate to this. Then you start doing management, and eventually you feel more comfortable doing it. And then you have room for other things, like maybe, mentoring other people besides your own team.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. So for me, the time has been when I feel not bored, but that I have things under control. Then I like to open up again the door to other things. But that's, again, curiosity kicking in.
I just wanted to say.
Yeah.
Okay. What is your area of focus now, or areas of focus? And what are you curious about right now?
I'm very curious. So the one thing I'm thinking right now is, should I love psychology. I love the structure of the mind, how the mind works, but also how people feel about things. And So I'm thinking now, should I study psychology? That's one thought that I'm having right now. Coaching and mentoring are very related to that. And the more I do it, the more that idea of maybe you should get like a formal education on that, besides the experience of, working with people. So that's one thought that I have. The other one is I recently transitioned, like last year, I transitioned from being in a corporate environment and being, at companies to being my own boss and to start as a freelance and, kind of, be your own boss. That's another thing that I'm discovering as a thing that, fulfills me now, because it allows me to combine certain things and certain projects. So that's also another area. So yeah, I think it's, again, listen to where you are at certain times. And the other thing is, and this is maybe an advice for everyone, what you do right now, you will probably not do in 5 years' time. Or 10 years' time, even. Well, definitely not 10 years' time. I mean, things move so fast today.
Yeah.
So don't be so afraid of trying. If you discover yourself being good at something, pursue that. And don't worry about, okay, will this last for the next 10 or 15 years? Who knows? But at least if you do something that you're good at and you start developing yourself in, you will, in 5 years' time, you will be better. Whatever it is that you will end up doing, you'll be better because you've worked on something that is your strength.
Yeah. So again, we move back or forward to what you have just said before, that when you focus on your strengths and when you nurture what you already have, the chances are quite big that you're going to achieve some great stuff.
And if not, you will feel good with yourself because, and this reminds me of something that I read some time ago, which is follow your talent, not your passion.
That's interesting.
And I'm a very big believer of that.
Yeah.
That phrase has created some controversy.
Yeah, can you elaborate a little bit more?
Yeah. Some people, at some point, I think we were told, oh no, follow your passion. What you're passionate about will be the thing that you'll be good at. I don't think that's true. I don't think that necessarily applies to everyone. I might have a passion for being a drummer. Right, and that's my passion, or for being, I love electronic music, and I might have a passion for being a DJ.
Yeah.
Am I good at being a DJ? No. Will that be something that will propel me forward? I don't think so. At least not right now, because it's not in my talents. Right, and I tried, by the way. So
yeah, I just wanted to ask, have you tried?
a little bit. So I believe in following your talent, which is, again, connecting to what you're good at and mastering it. Because if you follow your talent, you'll be good at it. That will create a positive reinforcement, which is super powerful. And that in turn will become your passion eventually.
Okay.
Right? It'll become something that you like, because everyone enjoys doing things right and being recognized for it and contributing to something, good, right? So follow your talent, follow the things or where you're good at, and become better at it. You'll love it, guaranteed, right? I mean, very, very few cases, and this might make the news, right? But in the 99% of the cases, if you do something, if you're good at something and you do something good and you're recognized, you love it. Much more than if you try something, and again, this goes with with being very stubborn at trying things that you're not good at. You become frustrated. So I'm not saying you don't have any passions, right? Yeah, have your passions, have your hobbies, but that's what hobbies are.
Yeah.
But follow your talent.
what I heard in between the lines right now is that sometimes we should let go of certain things, or maybe certain things that we thought that were right for us, but then when we started applying and actually doing that, maybe we noticed that that's not it. So on one side, we all talk about, yeah, set your goals, move towards them, follow your passion or your talent. But when do you think, do you think that letting go of things, ideas, goals, people, is a good or a bad thing sometimes?
I think it's a good thing. I think it's the basis of learning. We've been told that learning is all about becoming better and mastering things, and there's this one way or one direction of learning, which is being better, achieving more, getting more. No, there is another way of learning, which is trying and letting go, right? Learning from your mistakes, right? Learning from the things that don't work. So I think at least the when I was younger, and for maybe a couple of generations or more, we were raised in this effort trumps everything. Right? You put enough effort into something, you'll become good at it. No. I mean, no. That doesn't mean that you don't try. And that does not mean that you don't have to be perseverant at something, right? And resilient. Yeah. But resilience alone will not make you good. It will make you a sufferer if you don't listen to what you feel and what you're doing and start letting things go, right? So yes, I believe in the power of letting things go and not have this stigma of not trying hard enough, right? It's a balance, right? It's a delicate balance because you do need to try, and I believe in putting effort, but I believe that in the perfect combination of perseverance and creativity, which is you try something and you persevere, you put enough effort into it, but at some point, if it doesn't work, then creativity comes in, which is do something else or do it differently. One of the two. That, I believe, is a very powerful combination.
And how do you know when is the moment to either
stop?
let go, either let go or to keep moving?
I saw that question coming.
Yeah.
I saw that question coming. It's not easy. It's not easy, and sometimes we discover it too late, when our bucket of energy is empty, totally empty. So it's about, I think it's one of those things where I think the closest ones to you notice first. And so again, check on your friends, check on your close people, and listen to them if they start saying things like, "You don't look very happy doing this, Chema," or "Hey, what's going on with you? You seem this, or you seem stressed, or you seem down," or because usually we're the last ones to say, "Ooh." But I like to have this analogy of this bucket of energy, right? If you try things and they don't work, those are holes that you have in that bucket, right? They empty your bucket of energy. The things that you do and you're good at and they create something, those are things that replenish your bucket of energy. So it's good to every now and again say, okay, where am I? Where is my energy level in that bucket? Do I have, and if I'm doing something, is it a hole that drags energy, or is it something that replenishes? Replenishing energy doesn't mean that it's easy, right? I mean, it's hard, but at least you get your energy replenished, right?
Yeah.
And you have this healthy level of stress because you're doing something that's again replenishes your energy. And I think we all feel it's about feeling, it's about listening to ourselves. We all feel at times where, and you felt it, I'm sure, you were doing something really hard and it was hard, right? But then you finish it and it was like, I feel so happy about this.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's a good level of a stress that replenishes your. But when you were doing something and even when you finish it, you were like, oh, okay, maybe that's not, that's maybe one of the holes that is dragging energy away from you.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard there is a very, very similar metaphor about you were using the word bucket. There's an exercise that is basically it's about pot fillers and pot drillers, right? So like what's drilling your pot of energy or your bucket of energy, and then what's refilling it. But then before we become aware of what's making it fuller and what's draining our energy is again what you said, to pay attention to how we feel and to know ourselves and what are our pot fillers and pot drillers. And speaking of that, what would you say that are your pot fillers right now? So what are the projects or partners that you're collaborating right now? You said that recently you moved into the world of entrepreneurs. So what are being your pot fillers right now?
My pot fillers, things that bring positive energy. Working with individuals as a mentor is one. So helping them to navigate their careers, helping them to maybe find, what is that they want to do, or maybe if they move to a new position, helping them to be well prepared and hit it on the right start. That's something. So working with people is definitely one thing. Then the other one is fixing problems. It's one of the things that brings me joy. I don't know, finding things that, and this goes to related to the companies that I work with, right? The startups that are developing their solution or their sales processes. So finding the things that could be done better or are not working, and then working on those and fixing them, that brings me joy. I guess it's back to that feeling when I was a child and something was broken and I could go in and maybe touch this and that, and it was working again. That has. And then there are other things, in my hobbies that bring me joy, which are not related at all to the professional world, but equally important.
Yeah, as we said at the beginning, sometimes it is like being versatile brings you a lot of different, a lot of different pot fillers, definitely. Because then if these are not working today, then we have some other ones that are working today. And one way or another, we go back to curiosity, because I can definitely clearly detect it in everything that you do.
Yeah.
So
it's good to have your pot fillers identified.
Yeah.
I like that. I didn't know about the pot filler thing, but I'm gonna take it with me.
Yeah, feel free.
But I think it's good to have like a list of, hey, these are the things that bring me joy, and every now and again check. Ooh, I'm not doing any of this. That's why I feel a bit, down, and then do that.
Yeah.
Or do one of them.
Yeah, do one of them. Pick one of them. Okay, before, I believe that if we continue like that, we could move on to like 2 days. But what I always like to ask at the end of every episode we record here is there anything that you feel like sharing that I haven't asked?
Ooh, that's a very good question, because we talked about a lot of things that are close to heart. Well, I think we explored a lot of things, and honestly, no. I think, I think the conversation went, around leadership, yes, but then about the people and communication. Maybe if I think of leadership again, back to the theme of the podcast, right? communication, definitely. People, and get to know yourself so you can help others, definitely. I think the third component of leadership, or of a good leader, is to be able to set a goal, to tap into what needs to be done and how to get there. You then need communication to transmit your idea,
Definitely.
and then you need to work with people to make that idea, or that goal, something that is achievable. But for me, those are the three pillars of a good leader: communication, people, and then vision. I think being able to know where you want to be, or where your team needs to be, or where your company needs to be, and then draft it in a way that is motivational, that you can bring everyone along, and be able to tell to everyone, this is your bet in this vision, and this is why I need you. This is your contribution, and this is your gain. This is something that you will achieve if we all get to that vision. So yeah, that's the third pillar, I think.
Yeah, I like how you summed it up in the end, because what I really like about this conversation is that even though we haven't used the word leadership a lot, I actually think it's a great thing, because nowadays people talk about leadership a lot, leadership here, leadership there, but actually putting it down to more concrete and tangible things is something that then we can use, and we can do things. And I would definitely say that leadership is about people.
Totally.
And then the how we get to people is through communication, and then moving with people towards a certain direction, which can be either a goal or a long-term goal, which then later turns into a vision. So,
there is one last thing now that I'm reflecting.
Please.
Having a goal is not leadership. Having a goal is not a strategy. And that's very important, because especially in tech companies, which is the area that I know the most, we often mistake goals with a strategy. Right?
Yes.
Getting to 10 million ARR is not a strategy. You don't need a leader for that.
No.
You need a finance person to do the numbers and crunch and say you need to get to 10 million ARR.
Yeah.
The strategy to get to that's what a leader does. So when I was referring to the mission, that the leader, bringing everyone to a mission, and to an objective, the leader needs to draft the strategy, the how to get to that million. But the 10 million is not the strategy. And that's something that I see too many times confused nowadays in the business world.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I would also add inspire and motivate people along the way, because sometimes, in brackets, very often, we can get demotivated, but then a good leader is the one who actually notices that and then approach in a certain way, as you said, in assertive way and with empathy to get to their people.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here today with us, and I honestly hope to have you again and to have opportunity to host you again in our podcast, because I believe that we can draw a lot of very good insights from this episode, and thank you so much for that.
It's been a pleasure. It was a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome.
I'm a selfish kind of person.